Good afternoon, Your Honors. The scope of the executive's power to expend public funds has always been regulated by Congress. Whether the use of the Malampaya funds and the President's social funds by the executive conforms to this fundamental principle of our system of government is the constitutional issue placed before the Honorable Court. I will first proceed to discuss the constitutional issues raised with respect to PD 910 relating to the Malampaya funds and PD 1869 relating to the President's social funds. Thereafter, I will confront the arguments of the public respondents with respect to the request for the partial lifting of the Honorable Court's TRO. The presidential decrees creating these two funds being challenged today are remnants of the martial law days, where the powers of the executive and legislative branches were concentrated in one man. As wielder of both powers, the executive branch, under the subject laws, is given unbridled discretion to determine for what purpose the funds are to be applied. Such system of government no longer exists. The present Constitution enumerates and delineates the role of the executive and the legislative branches with respect to appropriations. Congress passes law appropriating public funds, while the President spends the budget. The Malampaya funds and the President's social fund violate the constitutional provision that no money shall be paid out of the Treasury except in pursuance of an appropriation made by law. The Constitution requires a positive act from Congress, the passing of a law to appropriate public funds. First, with respect to the Malampaya funds, the same is treated as an off-budget item. No law has been passed by the legislature appropriating the fund for payment. Neither did the executive branch include the same in the budget proposal that it is constitutionally mandated to submit to Congress. Second, with respect to the President's social fund, it is also treated as an off-budget item. Again, no law has been passed by Congress appropriating the fund for payment. Worse, the law delegates to the President the power to appropriate the proceeds to fund and finance infrastructure and social-civic projects throughout the Philippines. Furthermore, the subject laws creating the Malampaya funds and the President's social fund violate the constitutional requirement that discretionary funds must be subject to guidelines prescribed by law, which must emanate from the legislature. The law creating the Malampaya funds does not lay down guidelines for their disbursement. It authorizes the President to use the funds for such other purposes as he may direct. Contrary to the assertions of the public respondents, the principle of ejusdem generis cannot be cited to qualify the general phrase such other purposes for three reasons. First, there's no enumeration of particular words of the same class, an element for the principle to apply. Second, the words energy, resource exploitation, and development is a class that is complete on its own. Hence, the general words should be construed to mean a class other than energy, resource exploitation, and development. Third, the general words are further qualified by the phrase as may be hereafter directed by the President, which shows that discretion is given to the President to determine other purposes for which the funds may be applied. In fact, the executive branch has interpreted the presidential decree as giving it wide discretion to spend the Malampaya funds for such purpose as the President directs. This is evident not only from the issuance of EO 848, but even from the way the executive branch applied the funds. In a press release made on July 5, 2010, Budget Secretary Florencio Abad confirmed the Malampaya funds have been used for such varied purposes as the Armed Forces Modernization Fund, the Philippine National Police, and the National Housing Authority, among others. The law creating the President's social fund likewise does not lay down guidelines for its use and disbursement. The words infrastructure and social civic projects are general and vague. It authorizes the President to determine what constitutes infrastructure and social civic projects without guidelines to limit his spending power. That the President has wide discretion is evident from the phrasing of the law, specifically, and I quote, as may be directed and authorized by the office of the President of the Philippines, end quote. This unbridled power by the executive to expend money without a corresponding law wreaks havoc to the constitutional framework on appropriations and its system of checks and balances. Even worse are the staggering amounts at the disposal of the executive. Our people cannot rely on good faith commitments made by the present administration that public funds are being used for the common good. Our only real assurance lies in a judicial pronouncement on the constitutional metes and bounds of the issue of appropriations, especially with respect to lump sum discretionary funds given to the executive. Going now to the request of public respondents to partially lift the Honorable Court's TRO, we respectfully